Good morning, folks. Thank you very much. I would like to thank Tom, especially for that kind introduction and for inviting me here. And I appreciate the fact that you've all come here this beautiful Sunday morning. This is really an opportunity for me, so I'm doubly grateful for being here. A couple of years ago, as I started into retirement, I was reflecting on my career, both in local politics and in education, and thinking that what I wanted to do was write a book. And so I started it. And I wrote about 50,000 words, which might be half a book. And it was titled Public Education in an Era of Culture Wars. What I was struck by was the fact that everyone agrees that education is vitally important, and yet our schools continue to fail. How can that be? How can there be so much agreement as to the importance of education, and yet we can't seem to get it to work for us? So I pondered that issue, that problem for a while, and I thought I came up with an idea that was worthy of a book, and I wrote about a half a book, and ran that by some friends, and quickly decided that, whoops, I was premature here. I started this, but I needed to pause for two reasons. One, I needed to do more homework. I needed to do some more research and get some better foundation for what I wanted to say, to support what I wanted to say, to see if there was really some merit in it. The second reason was that as I ran this by friends, most of whom were like me, colleagues, fellow educators, I got virtually no agreement. We're all over the place. So here, we'll think about it for just a second. Public education. Everyone in this room has had an educational experience. Now, you may have gone to a private school, but I'm guessing most of you have gone to a public school for a goodly number of years. So you've had your experience. And the culture wars permeates our current culture and everything we're doing. And you may or may not have strong feelings about various issues that are raised in the culture wars. Can you hear me back there? Okay. So the two topics here, or the two things that I'm putting together, we're all very familiar with. And we all have opinions about them. It's hard. I'm going to be provocative this morning, and I'm not even going to try. It's just going to happen, just due to the nature of what it is that we'll be discussing here. What are we discussing? I have a tendency to kind of roam when I speak, so I've got a little boundary over here, so I'll roam more over this side. Well, in a nutshell, let's just look at this here. It takes a village to raise a child. African proverb. And yet you may remember that was the title of a book that was published in 1993 by Hillary Clinton, the then First Lady. Is there anything controversial about that to you? Or is it you kind of look at it, it takes a village to raise a child. Yeah, okay. No problem. Well, at the next National Republican Convention, Bob Dole says, it doesn't take a village to raise a child, it takes a family to raise a child. Is that really a contradiction, or do you want to pose that as a contradiction? It doesn't take a village. We don't need a village to raise a child. Why would you take exception to that? Is there a chance that if you agree that it takes a village, that in some way you're assigning a responsibility to government as opposed to the family? Would that involve the government somehow infringing upon your rights and responsibilities as a parent? If so, no. It doesn't take a village. It takes a family. Well, me, given my experience, I guess, in local government, I'm probably by nature a compromiser. I can't help myself. As an educator, I tend to see value in lots of different perspectives, I tend to want to take the best of whatever I'm hearing. So I'm going to add my own comment to that. Yes, it does take a village in addition to a family. But, and I add this proviso, the entire village and the family must be on the same page. And there's the rub. When you look at the various interest groups, as we call them, that are involved in public education, who would we be talking about? Well, there's kids or students, there's teachers, there's administrators, there's politicians, and then there's the larger community itself. Voters, taxpayers. If we're all in agreement as to what we want from education and how we expect it to go down, there's no problem. I don't even need a blackboard. I can scratch in the dirt on the ground and teach if that's what's expected, if that's what everyone... You look at what's going on in schools, say in the Middle East, where these young girls, especially here, are being, having the opportunity to come to school. And you look at it's just a naked building, maybe not even with a roof. They have no supplies whatsoever. There's no electronics, there's no nothing. But they go to school avidly and work with basically nothing. Why? Well, we all accept it. That's just the way things are. That's just what's available. Nobody complains about it. You just accept it. I would guess that as I look around the room, my guess would be that there are probably many women in the room who, when you think back about your educational experience, would say, I was counseled out of classes into other classes because I, as a female, was expected to go to be married, to be a homemaker, to be a mom, and the underlying assumption was I probably didn't need to go to college. So I was counseled in this homemaking, cooking, what have you. I won't ask for a show of hands. But I'm guessing some of you would say, yeah, that probably... But if that was everyone's expectation, including your own, it worked. It's only when we find that there's social change where that isn't satisfying for whatever reason. When you have higher aspirations, then the school system becomes problematic. And then you push against the tradition. Education by its nature is conservative. Why so? Well, Socrates taught you how to teach. It's a conversation between two people. It's a walk where the teacher is the guide. That's all there is to it. There's nothing complicated about that. All you need is a willing learner and someone who has some expertise that they can communicate about. And it's never changed over the last 2 millennia. It, by its nature, is conservative. We'll take a look at something here in a little bit. I'll come back to that same idea. Let me make sure that here's a brief overview of what I hope that we'll be able to discuss this morning. I'm going to keep pointing my ear, I guess, to make sure this thing is okay. If for some reason it gets out of whack and you can't hear me, please raise your hand and I'll try to fix it and make sure you haven't missed anything. I'm going to define what I mean by culture wars. We'll take a little trip down history lane here, looking at the civil rights movement and the genesis of the culture wars. Then we're going to look at a little education history. We'll actually kind of do that together. Take our little historical survey together, going back to 1954 to the present time. And then I want to look at the liberal-conservative conflict. And to simplify it as basically as I can, today, what liberals, progressives, would advocate in an educational setting, you'd call affirmative action. If you get a chance today to look at Sunday's op-ed page in the Press Democrat, there's a fairly long article by George Will, noted conservative intellectual, very smart man, who takes great exception to affirmative action. Diversity, he sort of mocks, if you will, even a little, the whole emphasis that modern progressives place on diversity, the importance for it, and how it plays out in an educational setting. He's got something you need to listen. I don't consider myself a conservative, but you need to listen. Conservatives, on the other hand, most recently advocate market-driven policy decision-making for virtually everything. Get government out of your life. Well, how are social choices made then? The market will make them. The market will make them. Let the market make these choices. Government just screws it up. The market's always right. There's a certain utopian aspect to that. And that would include market-driven policy in education. Excuse me. Need a staple. There we go. Or duct tape. Oh, okay. Yeah, so the whole question or recently of charter schools, which is a big thing, and it wasn't but a few years ago that public school teachers was going, oh, what's this charter school thing? Interpreted it as a move on the part of conservatives to undermine teacher unions, usually because charter schools are given special dispensation from normal regulations that govern usual public schools or normal public schools. One of which was that whoever runs it can hire and fire people pretty much at will. That certain hard-fought union rights did not have to be honored in charter schools. So, yes, many of your educational unions saw that as a threat to things that they had been able to accomplish over decades of bargaining with public schools. Okay, well, what can we learn from success? And I'll look at two examples here. Well, two classes of examples of success. The question that we need to always ask ourselves is, well, that might be nice, but does that really solve the big problem? Or is it replicatable? Is that success replicatable? If not, we just say, good, well, I'm glad there's one good example. And there's plenty of good examples all over the country. So when I say schools are failing, you might want to challenge me to go, well, what do you mean by that? How are they failing? Well, one good measure of failure is the fact that between 25 and 40% of all students who start the 9th grade in public schools in California disappear before graduation, vanish outside the system. They do not graduate from high school. Where do they go? We have a highly mobile society. And you folks are mobile, but you always come back to Oakmont. You just are mobile when you go on vacation, but you always come back home. No, I mean mobile. People who don't have work, don't have jobs, are chasing jobs. Or maybe they're running from the law. Who knows? Whatever it is. Kids are constantly dropping out of school and then maybe resurfacing somewhere else. When I was on the Santa Rosa Board of Education, there was one school in particular, in Santa Rosa Elementary School, where if you looked at the roll on the first day of class, and then you looked at that same classroom on the last day of class, in both cases there'd be, say, 30 students. But they weren't the same 30 students. There could easily be a 40% turnover in your students. You have to look at the names, match them up. Whoa, 40% turnover. It's hard to run a school system, when this is what's happening to you. But when kids get past the 9th grade and they have failed to learn to read with comprehension, and school is just one drag, and it's just hard to get there, and there's nobody at home that ensures that they do get there, when they move, they just never re-enroll. They disappear. I think that's a measure of failure. What can we learn from success? Then we'll look at here, hopefully, some theories of education, or what I call first principles. These are things that sort of motivate, I guess, my recommendations. And I hope you find it interesting. And then I'll propose a few, perhaps, solutions for proposals or things that we look at before we're done. Now, if somewhere along the way I say something that, just really provokes a strong reaction in yourself, and you need to ask a question. As a matter of fact, you kind of can't listen to me thereafter because this thing, he said, let's do whatever. Raise your hand. Let's stop and pause, and I'll do the best I can to answer your question before we go on. Culture wars. Public education in an era of culture wars. Well, what are the culture wars? Well, here's the thing that characterizes our current culture wars. There's diversity, political diversity diminishes. How so? Well, there might be a half dozen issues that are current or that we might be discussing in a political context, and any of those issues may have a couple of different options, I guess, or ways of looking at them, and you start to do a little simple math, and you kind of go, well, holy cow, I mean, there are easily dozens of different political positions that people might adopt and relative to whatever we're talking about here. And if you look at a large collection of people, and you start going around the room, and you say, well, on the first issue I'm for it, the second one I'm against it, the third one I'm against it, the fourth one I'm for it, the fifth one I don't know, and so on. And you would go around the room, and you can all be different. When you have a culture war and you have political polarization, no, you don't have that diversity. You're a red stater or you're a blue stater. You're a traditionalist, a conservative, or you're a progressive. And there's no middle ground. Now, here was an article from the Press Democrat here recently. June 5th, very recently, poll, partisan divide widening. A lot of folks, good-natured folks such as yourself, would go, oh, it's the politicians. They're the ones that can't get along. They're the ones that can't compromise. But they're not a reflection of us. No, it's the politicians. Nope, not so by the recent Pew study. Partisan differences now divide Americans more sharply than distinctions of race, religion, education, or sex. Former areas of bipartisan agreement have dissolved. The polarization has important practical consequences, forecasting continued gridlock in national politics. Public education in an era of culture wars. Why can't we fix our schools? We all agree they're important. Because we can't agree on anything. The new Pew, P-E-W study joins a growing body of data and analysis which rebuts the belief that voters are far more unified than their elected representatives. No, we live in a representative democracy. The division you see in your politicians is a reflection of the divisions in society. Diversity, political diversity diminishes. Issues are unsettled. Nothing ever gets settled. When I was first on the city council, I was kind of a lone, maybe I'm making this more heroic than it was. I thought of myself as kind of the lone environmentalist. But there were 5 of us on the council. dealing with more business-oriented folks. But they were all good people, and I think they respected me also. We would discuss something, and as I'm looking around the group, I could see how the vote was going to go. I might have been able to tell you that from the beginning. But nonetheless, we massaged the issue, and they always gave me the opportunity to make my spiel. And I asked one of them one time, why do you do that? I mean, you kind of know where I'm going to come at it with the issue from, and I kind of know where you're coming from. So why don't we just call for the question? He said, no, I actually very much greatly respected his answer. He said, there's 5 of us, odd number, of course, so that you could have, so there's no ties in effect, unless someone were to abstain. But a 3-2 vote, he said, decided an important issue. What if at the next election, that happened every 2 years, what if at the next election, that 3-2 majority flipped the other way? And then you take the issue that you just thought you had decided and revisit it and switch it back the other way. Nothing would ever get settled. So just because you think you could win the vote doesn't mean you necessarily want to call for the question. Let's see if you, on the losing side of this vote, have something to contribute so that you might actually vote for it. So that you might not want to or feel the need to revisit it when you think now you're in the majority and you can switch it all back to so you can be the winner. So let's talk about it some more. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. But it's worth the effort. Well, when you have political polarization, nothing is ever settled. We're still arguing about Roe v. Wade. 1973. What else aren't we agreed upon? Well, if you were looking at the primary elections here that were going to determine the Republican nominee over the past several months, Obamacare, here it was for almost throughout the 20th century, politicians have been talking about health care reform of some form or another. And here our first African-American president doing something with health care. Historic! And he said right off, he said, I know it may need to be changed. It's not perfect the way we passed it. So, he was open to fixing it. Nobody's talking about fixing it. What are they talking about? Wiping it out. It's not, but I thought we settled it. I thought we had a vote. I thought we had a long discussion. You lost. I hate to frame it that way for you, but let's move on. No, we're not moving on. No, we're going back. We're going to wipe it out. Nothing's ever settled. Values. Everything gets framed in terms of values. No, I'm not talking about values. This is politics. It's jobs. It's we've got to get business that we need to get done here. Every disagreement we have doesn't have to be framed in terms of values. It's just the day-to-day stuff that government has to decide so we can move on. Are we going to fix that road or not? Are we going to fix those potholes? How do we values? Well, you're going to have to raise taxes, and on it goes. Identity. See, with values, you think of yourself, your identity, you define in terms of your values. So when we start talking politics, we start identifying. It's not business that's taking place out there, so that when we're done with government business, we can go break bread together. You as a Democrat or me as a Republican, we can shake on it. Go down and have a beer together or something. No! I don't associate with those folks. Even on the Santa Rosa City Council, no matter how much we might debate something, we always went out to dinner afterwards. And there was always kind of this little feeling almost of kind of guilt. We were using taxpayers' money to buy us dinner. Is that okay? Well, my salary was only $600 a month, so I didn't feel like I was ripping people off too much. And that was with about a 20-hour-a-week responsibility that I had. For $600 a month, I didn't feel guilty about ordering dinner on paying with your tax money going for it. In fact, I thought it served a very useful purpose. It brought the council together over dinner after we'd just gone through perhaps a heated discussion of issues that were before us. Current council can't do that. There are folks who won't go to dinner afterwards. I don't think that's right. Something's wrong. Well, I don't hang around with those kind of folks. See, your identity gets somehow confounded with your political responsibilities. Resentment is the emotion that fuels this. How so? Well, I'll try to add some evidence to this as we go back and look through the last 50, 60 years here of the culture wars and how it's got confounded with the civil rights movement and the effect on education that takes place out of education. Those other folks, those elitists who look down. What was one candidate for the presidency of the United States says, this guy thinks everyone should go to college. What a snob. Whoa, I couldn't believe it. Think about that. What a snob. He resents it. I resent what you're saying. I resent the fact that you're not a right-to-lifer or you are promiscuous or whatever it is, or you believe in same-sex marriage. I resent it. It's an infringement. It's going to ruin my marriage. Excuse me? Well, that's the political climate. Let's look at a little bit of history here. If you can't read this, this is actually the first PowerPoint presentation I have ever prepared. Actually, I didn't prepare it. My daughter did. Some of you might know my daughter, JIM PEDGRIFT. She works for the city of Santa Rosa, and I think she was out here a week or two ago with an event you're speaking to. She may have spoken to some of you. But, I asked for an overhead projector. And you high-tech folks out here with an overhead projector, we'd have to get one out of the museum. Well, okay, you got a PowerPoint. Oh, okay. Well, so I, as I say, had to have my daughter help me put this together. And if it's, she said, I think you're putting too much, verbiage on there, Dad. You're kind of, so folks can't read it in the back. I'll be sure to read it. You won't miss anything. Actually, some of my friends probably suspect you could sleep through this whole talk and you wouldn't miss anything. But, I hope that's not true. Okay, I'm going to put the start here, 1954, Brown versus Board of Education. You're all familiar with this. What did it do? It undid the separate but equal, the Jim Crow laws that had been widely used, especially throughout the South. At the end of the Civil War, we said, well, okay, slavery's been abolished, but we've got to learn how to live with these freed slaves, but they don't have to go to our schools. They'll have their own schools. They will be separate but equal. Brown versus Board of Education said, separate is inherently unequal. Undoing the Jim Crow laws. There's the beginning of our modern civil rights movement, and it took place in an educational setting. I believe there is a close association between the civil rights movement that each and every you, I'm looking, I see all your folks, you're as old as I am. You've lived through this stuff. So this isn't history, this is your life. And I think that public education is right at the heart of of the civil rights movement and the conflicts that it generated, the tension that it generated in our society. 1955, Why Johnny Can't Read, the name of a text by a reading specialist, by the way, who, why do I put that up there? Well, it might have been one of the first opportunities for what became a popular book, criticizing what was going on in education. I don't know whether or not it's of historic significance, but it did start a debate among reading specialists that goes on today as to whether or not it's the best way to teach reading. But it was an analysis of and a criticism of what was the then current method of teaching reading in our elementary schools. And this guy said there was a better way of doing it. And it might have just sort of sat there and people, oh, well, it's academics, arguing with other academics. It doesn't really involve us. Except here we get Sputnik in 1957. Now, I was a junior in high school. I'm guessing several of you were about the same place when Sputnik went up. It was traumatic. Now, Sputnik has nothing to do with the civil rights movement and nothing to do with the culture wars. But it was a shocking event to this country and our educational system when those frickin' Ruskies, those commies, beat us into space. So what did it have us? It had us take a long, hard look at what we're doing in our schools. Just at the time that we're integrating them. Just at the time when we're learning that Johnny can't read. Whoa. 1957, the Little Rock Nine. So here's 9 young black students trying to go to the public school, the white public school in Little Rock, Arkansas. And it's going to take the National Guard to get them in the door. 1963, University of Alabama, 2 black students wanting to go to the all-white University of Alabama. The government standing on the steps, blocking their entrance, saying, not today, not tomorrow, not ever. (1964) Civil Rights Act, signed by LBJ. This was basically voting rights. It wasn't specifically aimed at schools as such. But with that, LBJ, great Texan, said, we've lost the South for a generation. With the signing of the Civil Rights Act, we, the Democrats, have lost the South for a generation. I'll try to explain to you exactly how that came to pass. In fact, it's going to be more than a generation. 1965, Voting Rights Act, sort of cleaning up some provisions in the Civil Rights Act. And in 1965, the Racial Imbalance Act, which was passed in Massachusetts. That was not federal legislation. That was Massachusetts legislation, which began court-ordered busing for the state of Massachusetts. Well, in Massachusetts, there's a blue state, or it used to be anyway. Things must have gone easy, don't you think? I mean, I can understand why they might have problems down there in Alabama and Arkansas, but this is New England, this is Massachusetts. I mean, this will be a slam dunk. Well, of course, it's taken to court. 1971, the Supreme Court decision regarding the legality of court-ordered busing. They said, yep, it's legal. You can do it. And from 1974 to 1988, we have the Boston busing crisis. Say, well, oh my God, all those uneducated, blue-collar whites in South Boston who this brings out all the elitism on us folks who don't have a problem with racial integration. Yeah. It was not easy going. Actually, court-ordered busing is only sort of evaporated as an issue basically when the people of color said, I'd rather send my kid to my neighborhood school, just like you white folks have been wanting to do for the last few decades. So it's just kind of dissolved as an issue that divides us. I think that's fairly accurate. 1976, Serrano Priest, that's a court decision in California. Serrano Priest was a decision that basically said local school financing inevitably leads to educational inequality because there's rich districts and there's poor districts. So we have to try to seek, because you will recall, school finance back in those days was all local property tax. So, famous case of Emeryville where they had large, industrial operations with a lot of property taxes coming in, very few students. I mean, they had a bowling alley at school. I mean, it was supposed to be one of the finest high schools in the area. Everything was plush. They had lots of money. Few students and lots of tax income. Other places you have a lot of students and very low taxes will inevitably have a school system that, looks shabby. So the court says, no, Serrano Priest. It's inherently unequal. We've got to equate what we spend on students across district boundaries. Well, that was followed here. Serrano Priest, speaking of the culture wars, was a progressive movement. Those would be the liberals who brought Serrano Priest to the courts, wanting to achieve equality of opportunity, civil rights. The conservatives said, oh my God, we came with Prop 13. Now this was the third or fourth time that Jarvis Gann came before the voters of California. And before, it had been defeated by Californians because of the stereotype, oh my God, it'll ruin our schools. Until it finally reached the point here, especially after Serrano Priest. I heard Jarvis speak out what was then the El Rancho out on the Santa Rosa Avenue. I went out there to hear him speak because I ran for the City Board of Education in 1978. And I ran against Prop 13. Prop 13 won, and I lost. But I went out to hear Mr. Gann, and he was kind of going and just saying how property taxes are just going through the roof. Well, my dad, who I was raised in a divorced family, I was raised by my mom, my grandparents, but my dad, I always maintained contact with him, owned a home in Oakland. He said that over the years, his property taxes were higher than his mortgage. Needless to say, he was for Prop 13. Well, I got to admit, Dad, I understand. Yeah, and I was, an educator. I was teaching at the time. And I saw the threat of Prop 13. So I was urging against it. But I have to admit, I can understand why he would be for it. His property taxes were higher than his mortgage. Well, Prop 13 passed. So, here we get the liberals advocating Serrano Priest in the name of equality of opportunity. We get the conservatives advocating Prop 13, keep your taxes low. They both passed. So what happened? State took over. Your local property taxes might end up in the schools, but they don't go there directly, unless you vote for a bond override or something. Otherwise, everything's collected by the Sacramento, and then there's a subvention back to your local districts according to formulas that meet the provisions of Serrano Priest. So now we're no longer separate but equal. Now we're equal and underfunded. Okay, now we get 1980. 1980, the Reagan Revolution. Reagan is referred to as a transformative president. Everyone, Democrats and Republicans, both agree. Reagan is a transformative political figure. Well, what's the transformation that took place? I mean, what did he do that transformed us? He undid the coalition of FDR back in the 30s. For 50 years, the same coalition had elected Democrat after Democrat after Democrat. He undid that. How so? Well, these Dixiecrats, basically these Southern whites who would never vote Republican. Why not? Why wouldn't a Southern white vote Republican back before Reagan? Because Republicans were the party of Lincoln, sure. Some Yankees. You can't vote for a Republican. I'd rather vote for a yellow dog than vote Republican. I'd rather vote for a yellow dog than vote for a Republican. Well, 1980, what's been happening to the Southern whites? Little Rock 9, University of Alabama, court-ordered busing. The federal government is coming right into your schools, right into your home, and telling you how to live. Mostly by Democrats. LBJ, Texan traitor. Reagan made it safe for Dixiecrats to vote Republican. That's the transformation of Reagan's transformational figure. He made it safe. The South is now solidly Republican. Somehow their historical memory is lost track with the connection with, well, Abraham Lincoln wouldn't recognize the current state of the Republican Party, I dare say, but we'll save that for another discussion. Yeah. See, he didn't start the Southern strategy. That was started by Nixon before, but it wasn't kind of as overt. When you hear a debate, matter of fact, George Bush did it the last time around in 1980 on a national debate, looks right into the camera and addresses Democrats and says, if you don't want to vote for this Massachusetts liberal here, you're welcome. You can come vote with us. You don't see Democrats doing the same. You don't see Democrats addressing, well, Republicans, or if you're unsatisfied, it doesn't work the other way. There's been no transformation in which previous Republicans have now been won over to the Democratic side. Doesn't happen. Only gone the other way. Dixiecrats, who would never vote for Republicans, are now solidly Republican. 1983, Reagan commissions a nation at risk to make recommendations on excellence in education. Conservatives are not anti-education at all. I would never say that. No. That's one of the things that's so surprising to me, is how there can be total agreement on the importance of education. We just can't seem to solve our problems. So they said, oh my God, our schools are failing. I throw in here 1989, Heather Has Two Mommies. What does that have to do? Well, that's sort of like a follow-up that Johnny can't read here, I guess. Here's a book that would be found perhaps in a junior high library. Heather Has Two Mommies. These two mommies are a lesbian couple who are raising Heather. And I guess the school librarian who might think that there are some students in that school who are living under those circumstances and who might find this book. It's written for, youth. They might find that helpful, might have a copy in the library. Not in my library. So I just point that out. I think we've got one about two dads, too. There's another book about somebody has two dads. It gets right to the heart, doesn't it, of the kind of issues that we just split, we just divide. some of us would say, well, if that book is helpful for a student in school, shouldn't it be there in the library? Freedom of expression and freedom of, we tie it to all sorts of lofty things. And other folks who take a different view say, nope, doesn't belong in the library. 1992, Republican National Convention, Declaration of Cultural War. Pat Buchanan, quote, "There is a war raging for the soul of America." Now here's the first time that the phrase, no, that's not quite true. There's been a book written previously using the phrase culture war. And I don't know how widespread it was or how good a sale it was. The phrase was out there, but here now at the National Convention, there's a formal, if not a declaration, at least a recognition. There is a war going on for the soul of America. Values, identity, resentment. These are, he didn't say, boy, we've got some issues here that are, boy, really tough to work through, tough to reach. No, it's a war for the soul. Are you going to compromise if we're at war for the soul of America? You never compromise with the devil. He said, dude, this is your identity. Let me, okay, hot button issues. These are just some of the issues that separate us here. Abortion. Remember I said that as diversity diminishes, as you look at each issue, there isn't a person in this room who can't say, as we go down this list, conservatives say this, liberals say that. There's no doubt in anyone's mind, unless, you've been gone for a long time. Abortion. Gun ownership. Second Amendment. It's a constitutional right. I got my machine gun, and you're going to take it from my cold, dead hands. Homosexuality. Same-sex marriage. I look at that issue, and I am absolutely perplexed. How much heat that generates. I just don't get it. And then we have a court case that decides it, and then we have Prop 8 that undoes it. Nothing's ever settled. Nothing's ever settled. Christmas observance. Kid, wasn't there always a scene down at City Hall, on the lawn at City Hall? Not anymore. Okay, well, it's because separation of church and state. Tax-funded art. I put tax-funded art only because that's the issue that actually ignited the discussion back in 1992. The National Institute for Art, I guess, was giving money to a traveling photo exhibit. Depicting homosexual couples. Your tax money is being used for those sorts of displays. Yeah, that's actually what ignited it. I don't think we worry about it much today, but there you are. Okay, here you can't read this. I'll just summarize it for you here. I just took this off the web because there was something on the Daily Beast. It was Newsweek had published their 100 best schools, 100 best schools in the nation. I go, whoa, let's see what that is. I just want you to I'll read some of these to you here. Here's an academy. Here's a gifted magnet school. Here's another magnet school. Here's international baccalaureate. Here's what they call a signature school. Here's a preparatory school. Here's a school of science and technology. Here's an honors school. Here's a school for advanced studies. Here's the Andrew Carnegie Vanguard School, Uplift Education, Preparatory School. Do you think these are inner city schools that are... No, they're all elite schools. Here in Kentucky, Texas, Arizona, Alabama, Florida. Graduation rates. Now, I told you 25 to 40% of all students who start the 9th grade in California disappear before graduation. Well, what opposed to tough it out, you know? Graduation rate, 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%. Whoa, 99%. Ooh, look at that. I bet these are the best high schools in the country. And God bless them. I'm glad we got them. But are these the solution to our problem? I don't think so. I mean, I'm glad they're there. I'm glad they provide an opportunity for students that are clearly gifted students. They're all going on to college. We need college graduates. Yeah. Here they have SAT scores. Oh, this one, somehow I lost it. It had the student-teacher ratio. And I don't know if it dropped off the end there or not. College-bound, SAT scores. Student-teacher ratios were about 12 to 1. Well, that's what you'd expect at an academy like that. When I was on the San Jose Board of Education, and we were interviewing for administrators, this would have been back in the early 80s. I'd never heard of this lady. I think she was at UCLA, I'm not sure, educational researcher by the name of Madeline Hunter, who had done some studies on student-teacher ratio and how it plays out. And her basic finding was, at least what she published at the time, was that there was no discernible difference in test scores for class sizes between about 15 and 40. Now, if you went over 40, then you'd notice a deterioration, and if you went under 15, you'd notice an improvement. But somewhere between 15 and 40, it kind of did that. And the administration for San Jose City Schools, at the heart, here's evidence. Here's what we need. This isn't just our opinion. Now we have evidence for it. So class sizes are typically 35. I taught a class at Rancho Cotati that had 38. It went to 39 after about the first week of school. Whoa. Now, I had a problem. I didn't have enough desks. So when I went to the administration, they said, well, we'll put another desk in the room, and we'll let it go to 40 if necessary, but if it goes over that, we'll split up the class. But they were willing to let the class go to 40. How did I feel about that? Actually, one of the best classes I ever had. Why? Because these were all college-bound kids. It was fourth year of math. They all came to class on time. They all sat at their desk. I could start on time. We could get through our lessons. They raised their hands. Yeah, I could teach 40 students like that. But I also had a remedial math class. And the limit was 24. And I could barely keep them in their seats. In fact, in that same class, they wheeled in a student, I guess in the name of, I don't know what, who had developmental disabilities. He was in a wheelchair and had trouble talking and actually had trouble writing. It might have been cerebral palsy. We would take a piece of paper, and I had other students help me, and we'd tape it down on the desk so that when he wrote, the paper wouldn't fly off. And he wrote so large, he could do just like one problem on a page. And I'd write the problem in about 3-inch letters for him, and then he could work it out, and I'd have a student there to help him. Needless to say, when you add that to a class of 24 students who didn't want to be there, and who would, at any opportunity, sneak away, I was frazzled every day dealing with that. So class sizes, it's kind of tricky, We've gotten rid of a lot of our shop classes, wood shop, metal shop, what have you, because here I guess perhaps by law, they were limited to 24 students. You just can't have a shop with heavy equipment around and dangerous equipment and more than 24 students under the supervision of a single teacher. Well, we just can't afford those kind of student-teacher ratios. It's a waste of money, I guess. So we do away with shop now, industrial arts. I think to our detriment, but be that as it may. Now here's I just want to point out, of the 100 best high schools in the country, God bless them. I'm glad we got them. Now, I'm sure these make all the traditionalists very happy. But if you think you can point to that and say, your problem, you need to teach like that, or you need a school like that, is an illusion. You simply can't do it. It is true. It's just, it doesn't work. Now, here was an article. I passed this out, I hope, to most of you, if not all of you, before you, as you came in the door. This is from the Press Democrat. We're not going to read this together right here. This is emphasis on education and relationships. This is by David Brooks, who I'm sure you're familiar with here, who is a noted conservative intellectual. He's not an ideologue, an intelligent man who wrote this article, and it brought me to tears here when I read this. This was in March here. And if you haven't read it yet or haven't had a chance, when you get home, look at it and just sort of highlight. I'm just going to go through a dozen things. I'm not going to look at it in great detail, other than to say that what he's doing is he's reviewing a charter school in New York, a junior high school in New York City that is non-traditional, and he's just saying, whoa, this kind of works, and he's describing it. So what's he say? This is from the Team Teaching. Quote, the teachers are not solitary. If there's one thing after almost 40 years in the classroom, high school, community college, state university, if there's one thing that characterizes my profession, is the isolation that I have in the classroom. It's me and my students. I did team teach while I was at Rancho Cotati. Myself and 3 other teachers formed a school within a school that worked, I thought, quite successfully for a year, and then without administrative support, it fell apart, it disbanded. But that gave me an opportunity to work with other teachers. I think teachers, if you're comfortable with the isolation, it can have negative effects. In that, if you're in the 5th grade, you've prepared your curriculum, you've got some movies. I've seen this happen. I know, I'm not just making this up. And you're sharing amongst your colleagues here. I don't want to tell them I've got this great movie that I used as a great resource, because they'll start using it in the 4th grade. And then I won't be able to, surprise my students with it in the 5th grade. So there's a natural tendency to kind of hang on to what you've got. Once you accommodate the isolation of teaching, you can take great pride in, I am the teacher. This is my lesson plan. I put this together, and I take great personal pride in it, but I don't want to share it with anybody. Okay? Because you'll be stealing all my great ideas, all the ideas I put all that work into. I don't get any bonus points for that. So at this school, the teachers are not solitary. In fact, when you talk to teachers and they complain about their colleagues, what they say is, they're not a team, this guy isn't a team player. I mean, and by that I don't mean team teaching, but I mean someone doesn't enforce the rules. And if I'm doing the best I can to keep the school rules, observed by all the students, and some guy who wants to be popular is not doing it, trust me, that pisses me off. Teachers, you have to be a team. You have to support each other. Even when there are those times when it's just you. You might be teaching alone for whatever reason. You might be the only one qualified to teach a given topic. That's okay. But you have to be a team. You have to support your colleagues. The person here, Simone Warnaker, a conservative Jew, is the person, I guess, with yarmulke, and I don't know if he's got whatever, but he goes on to describe that when this fellow proposed this class, it was kind of like, whoa, I don't know, how's this going to work? He's going to go into a predominantly black neighborhood, this conservative Jew. He's going to be the head teacher. Is that going to work? We're sort of under the opinion that we need, black teachers for black kids? We need Spanish-speaking teachers for Spanish-speaking kids? We need lower socioeconomic teachers for low... Really? What do you mean, an observant Jew can't teach junior high? What, because he's too weird? So he said, wow, that was kind of unexpected here. Charismatic leadership. This is in contrast with the 100 best high schools. Those are all replicatable programs at those best schools. International baccalaureate. Been around for decades. If for whatever reason you think you want to meet the needs of your better students, your elite students with a program of international baccalaureate, it's all set out for what you have to do. This gentleman right here is a charismatic leader. It's a calling. Teaching is a calling. And I want to thank, who's the conservative candidate from Georgia? What's his name? Gingrich, thank you. I guess his mother might have been a teacher, I'm not sure, but he made the statement, teaching is a calling. I said, yes! You can learn from conservatives. Everything they say may not be objectionable. Yeah. Well, if it's a calling, you don't just stumble into teaching, then your education leadership tends to be charismatic. It's somebody with a vision, with a dream. Come on, guys, let's do this. Traditional school model produces factory workers. Now, what you were looking at there on the 100 best schools is that traditional school, but done expensively anyway, done right. It takes the traditional curriculum, that actually augments it, I'm sure, enriches it, I'm sure, with the latest technology, with the finest teachers, and makes it work. So, when you talk about traditional school model produces factory workers, well, yeah, that's what it does for most of the lower students. Every topic gets chopped up, go to school, go 6 or 7 classes, bells, go to one to the next, curriculum that may or may not be coordinated anyway. I mean, you got everyone in this room, think back, 9th grade, Algebra 1, 10th grade, geometry, 11th grade, second year algebra. Then if you were going to go to college or engineering science, then you took your 4th year of math. If you were a female, you probably took cooking. Okay, that's the old, yeah. You probably didn't need algebra 2 either. Since you were going to be a mom. He did not invent new approaches. There are no new approaches. Socrates showed us what an education was. It's a conversation. It's a walk together with a guide. I've been down the road before. That's why I'm the teacher. You're walking with me. Since I've done this before, I'll point out these things for you along the way. And you know what? Every once in a while, a student will observe something that I haven't seen before. Thank goodness. That's what makes education so much fun. But by and large, as the guide, I know where we're going. You as the student don't. That's why I'm the teacher, okay? Come with me. There's nothing new. What about all that technology? Oh, it can be helpful. But you gotta want to make the journey. Take some things from Waldorf schools. Are any of you familiar with Waldorf schools? This is not a Waldorf school. Okay, well, Waldorf schools were the work of a German educator, Rudolf Steiner, 19th century, created it for the Waldorf cigarette manufacturing company in Germany. We have a Waldorf school over in West County, right where you'd expect it, over there in West County. Touchy-feely type. One of the things they do at Waldorf School is that when you start the first grade, you keep your first grade teacher in the second grade, the third grade, the fourth grade. Your teacher moves with you through the grades. When you get to the 7th grade, the teacher gets a year off and then goes back and starts the first grade with a new group. Sabbatical. So we kind of go, well, I'm not sure I like that idea because my little Johnny wasn't doing good in the first grade, and I sort of want him to have a different teacher in the second grade who won't be prejudiced in thinking that he's a troublemaker. How do you like the idea of your little Johnny who can't read having the same teacher year after year after year? Well, that's what they do at this school. Students do a lot more public speaking. I think that, we don't seem to teach listening as well as speaking. Our schools, we say, our schools are failing, that, the kids are falling through the cracks. Our kids are seeking out the cracks. They don't fall through the cracks. They hide in the cracks. Why? They're not doing well in schools, they're being bullied, whatever. They just want to stay out of view, okay? You have to encourage your kids. Stand up and speak. What do you think? You have to address them. You have to encourage. I think public speaking, that's how, I have college students in Sonoma State who can sit next to the same person 3 times a week, all semester long. And on the last day of class, if I said, you know that person's name? No. How can you do that? How can you sit next to that same person 3 times a week, all 15 weeks, all semester long, and never know their name? Never know anything about them. Never introduce yourself. Well, one way you get kids to speak, stand up and talk and share amongst the group. That builds team cohesiveness amongst the students. Salaries are higher. Well, you could have suspected that. Master teachers can earn $120K per year. That's about twice what I retired at. No excuses. If there's one thing that characterizes great teachers, and they come all sizes, all shapes, all colors, you can't look at a person and know they're a great teacher. And there's different styles, but there's one thing that characterizes every one of them. No excuses. They don't fool around. They know why they're there. They know the purpose of why they've gathered these students, and we're going to get some work done. No excuses. Discipline. You go, whoa, does that mean it's real hard? You come to class and, you can't even smile? No, don't be silly. No, you can still have a good time in class. It's just we're not going to fool around. We got work to do. We're heading down the road. We've got a goal to go to. Okay, we've got to keep moving. We'll pause, have a good time, share, tell you a joke. Greet the teacher before entering her domain. God, I love that. If you get a chance to see the movie now at the Summerfield, Monsieur Lazare, Canadian film, Montreal. Kids line up before you go into class. Here they line up at this school. The teacher stands at the door. This is my domain. I am the teacher here. I invite you into my domain. You acknowledge me as you walk in. I have students at school who might have gotten there before I did. They don't even turn the lights on. I walk into a darkened room and there's students kind of sitting there. And I'm kind of going, this is your classroom. How come you didn't turn on the lights? Oh, well, it wasn't my job. What? You greet the teacher. They work with the unions. What? I was taking a cruise last summer with my family. I had a book on education called Wasting Minds. I was reading it and a fellow sat down beside me. He goes, oh, what you reading there? Oh, it's about, education. They go, oh, well, what's the answer? I said, well, that's why I'm reading the book. I find out. I said, by the way, what do you think the answer is? Get rid of those damn unions. That is probably the most popular single answer. If you saw Waiting for Superman, which was a very disappointing movie for me, just to say, there was some interesting stuff that needed to be responded to, for sure. But no, you work with the unions. You don't pose them as enemies. Educationally is fundamentally about the relationship between teachers and students, the conversation. It's a walk we're taking together, side by side. I'm the guide. I'm showing you where to go here. People learn from people they love. Whoops. Let me... It'll pass. Yes, that chokes me up. You can't teach information, in a value-free environment, or in an emotion-free environment. I'm a math teacher. All you deal with is numbers. It doesn't work. You have to have at least respect, if not love. And respect, not just for my authority or my expertise, but for me as a human being. There's only one thing of value in a classroom, and that's caring, and it goes both ways. As your teacher, I care for you, and as a student, I want to see that you care for what we're doing here. You care for me and the class. So if you don't want to call it love, call it caring. So that's what they work on, is building that student-teacher relationship. Yes, between an Orthodox Jew and black kids. Can it be done? You damn well bet it can. However, he has creme de la creme of the teachers. And I ask you, is it replicatable? I don't know. Not in an era that's suffering from culture wars. Well, I'm going to skip over this here. It's going to take just a few minutes. I need to wrap up here within 5 minutes. Okay, I'm actually a little late here. I'm sorry. First time I've actually given this. Children learn, to become adults from adults, which means that we as adults, it's our responsibility when I sit in my class and I see students who don't seem to be particularly motivated, they've gone through 12 years of public schooling. We made them into the passive students that they are. My job is I want to get them fired up. I said, I need to hear from you. I'll ask them a question. There's no answer. I've got a bunch of phony bills. I want, play money in effect. I said, I got a $20 bill for anybody who will answer this question. Well, now they'll kind of look at me and go, and I'll ask the question again. And you've never asked a question that you intend to answer yourself. If you're asking the class a question, you leave it with them. This is my question for you. I'm not going to answer it. It's for you. So we're not going on until you answer. I got $20. I have a $20 bill. I have to be careful how I phrase it. Because it says right on a $20 bill. It says right on a $20 bill. So some student will finally go, well, that's wrong, but good try. Okay, but there's the right answer. Where's my $20 bill? Well, I bring it out and they go, oh, that's not real money. I said, it says right across it, $20 bill. The kids tend to be real passive, but we've made them that way. We're responsible for the school system, not them. The purpose of choice is buy-in. Conservatives' market-driven policy thinks that government inherently screws up, just can't get anything right. And somehow the market always decides what's best, highest and best use. So if you give people choices in charter schools, that will improve education. There are examples of charter schools that might be really innovative, like the one we just looked at here. A lot of them, no difference at all in the public schools. So choice by itself doesn't mean whatever you choose is going to be better than what's available. The purpose of choice is buy-in. I give you a choice so that you'll participate. Now, after teaching in high school for 15 years, I never had a student come to me with a request to make a choice, either to join my class or to exit from my class. 15 years. Never had a request where a student was making a choice, but that the choice did not unify that student with a friend. No one joined my class because they said, Mr. Pedgrift, you know, you've got this great reputation of being a great math teacher. I want to learn from the best. I want to be in your class. You'll be dreaming if you think that's going to happen. I want to be in your class, Mr. Pedgrift. Why? Because my friend Mary's in your class. That's why they want to get in my class. Mr. Pedgrift, you know, I want you to sign me out of your class. Why? Did I do something wrong? Is there some better place you think you can learn more, maybe from another teacher? My style doesn't fit your learning modalities. Is that what your issue is? No, because, you know, my friend Alice is in another class. That's the only choice that people make. Parents, why do they want to make choices? Oh, they've heard that Mrs. So-and-so in the 4th grade doesn't work well with boys. She tends to be, you know, so I don't want my son in her class. You heard what? From who? From how? From what? Choice? You give people choices to buy in. That's the only reason for it. Compulsory education should be terminated by the 10th grade. The change in attitude from high school to college, about 18 years old, should be pushed down. All too often, the last 2 years of high school are just a waste of time for so many students. Really, they're older, they're ready for the world. They're ready to be. They want to be in college. I was 16. I went to SRJC at 16. I didn't have any problem adjusting socially to school. No, but we do just the opposite. We want to keep them in school. Why? ADA, money. You don't want to send your kids off to a program outside of school. No, I think let them make their choices. By that, what I'm not saying is that you're going to cut short their educational opportunity. That's not true. When I was in Hungary, I met a young lady down the hall. She was 2 years in college. She wanted to make a change in her curriculum. The problem was that if she changed her major, it was going to make her come back for a 5th year. Yeah? You're entitled to 4 years of college in Hungary. But if she had to go back for a 5th year, she'd have to pay for it herself. That's what made the choice a little tougher. They get 16 years of free education in Hungary, not 12. So when I say compulsory should be terminated by the 10th grade, I'm not saying kick them out of school and get rid of them. I'm saying now let them make a real choice. Go to community college or whatever it might be. School decision-making should be local, very local. Site councils, comprised of teachers, parents, and students when appropriate, should be handling a whole lot of issues that we now pass on to the district level, who then have to make sure that it's in compliance with Sacramento. Affirmative action should be eliminated. Whoa! That ought to get a rise out of some of you. Read the George Will article in today's paper. Conservatives have been pointing this out. John McCain, at the National Convention in 2008, said affirmative action, conservatives, affirmative action is just no longer necessary. It's played itself out. He also got a standing ovation when he said what we need to do for public education is get rid of all the deadwood teachers. That got him a standing ovation. Got to listen to him, though. Don't have to agree with him. Got to listen to him. Affirmative action. Read the George Will article. We spend an awful lot of bureaucratic energy keeping numbers on all sorts of stuff. If you're going to make it free, let people make their choices. and then you just offer the best opportunity you can. There should be one statewide salary schedule. I have negotiated for the teachers. I negotiated the first contract for Rancho Valley Roller Park. Then I ran for the Board of Education. Then I negotiated on the other side of the table. When Santa Rosa had a teacher strike in 1980, I was on the school board in Santa Rosa. 8 years on the Santa Rosa City Council. We had 5 unions we negotiated. I have negotiated. It is a giant waste by and large. Not necessarily at the city level, but at schools. It's detrimental in the following way. We come together. The other side proposes something. You look at it. Doesn't matter to you. Yeah, give it to them. No way you're going to give it to them. If they ask for it, it has value to them. Let's hold it and see what we can get for it. That's the way you negotiate. You never give anything away. The benefit of the whole never guides your actions. Never. When you negotiate. You're representing a segment of the whole. That's who you're representing, and that's who you're fighting for. It's extremely detrimental. Negative. 1 minute. Local collective bargaining should be eliminated at the district level. Statewide salary schedule. There's no reason at all why we have hundreds of school districts throughout the state. Every one of them goes through the same agonizing process every year, every other year, and you end up the same place everybody else does. Why do we do it? Why do we... It's a remnant from back when local property taxes, paid for your schools. We don't need to do that. We go to war every 2 years. Occasionally, we actually have a strike. Negative. We don't need to do it. And it's 12 o'clock. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jim. We'll see you next